Hello, I'm John Rossi, a touring drummer with a love of all things animal. When I'm on the road, I visit as many zoos, aquariums... Hey, wait a minute. What's going on? Hey, what's going on there? Hello? 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 We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you Rossifari Zoo news. News you can use from the world of zoos and conservation. Every week, we bring you breaking news and analysis from around the globe, featuring the animals you love and the people who care for them. And here's your anchorman, John Rossi. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to Rossifari Zoo News, your look at everything going on in the world of zoos, aquariums, conservation, and general animal weirdness. So y'all, I am heading back out on the road. By the time you listen to this, I'll be on the road, having already done some shows in some places, with more coming up in Pennsylvania, and then heading off to Texas for a few more. And I also have shows coming up Long Island and Connecticut and right outside Philly, all kinds of different places. So yeah, and it's kind of funny. I laugh about all the acronyms in the zoo world, but I'm currently in the process of working on an MDQ, a few GBOFs, and then 2 runs of UTS. So maybe I can't be too mean about the acronyms in the zoo world. But this year is shaping up to be pretty gig heavy. After the last 2, I kind of took some time off in comparison to my usual crazy schedule. So I'm looking forward to getting back out on the road and seeing some new places and hitting some new facilities. And so all of that should be really great. As a matter of fact, I have some exciting stuff coming up for the podcast as we get rolling here. So I normally try to never announce interviews before they happen because life gets in the way, like all the time. But I am confident that these are happening this week. So I want to share because I'm excited. And let's be honest, if they fall apart for some reason, hey, we can all sympathize together. So the day this episode drops, I will be striding confidently into the AZA headquarters to interview Dan Ash, as well as Katie Lieben for the podcast. Now, Katie is the person who runs the SAFE programs, and I've been working with her a lot with Safe Red Panda, and it's been a lot of fun. And actually, this all came about because the AZA actually reached out to me to have me help them celebrate SAFE reaching 50 species. And so this interview is going to be the first of a 2-part series doing just that. This has been in the works for the last couple of weeks now, and I'm pretty stoked that the PR team at the AZA is pretty excited about Rossifari. I'm not going to mention what the second episode of that celebration is going to be because it's very cool and very different as well. But let's just say that they're going to be 2 very, very cool episodes. And, the fact that I'm now working in collaboration with the AZA, I don't know what that'll mean for the podcast moving forward, but I mean, let's be honest, it's not a bad thing, right? That's pretty cool, and I'm pretty excited about all of this. So, yeah, I'm excited. And then the day after that, on Saturday, I'll be heading to the Metro Richmond Zoo to talk to them about Poppy, their new baby pygmy hippo that has taken the nation by storm. As a matter of fact, I was joking around with Zoe today and pointed out that the team that takes care of Poppy is going to have a really big week this week because they were on Good Morning America and then are going to be on Rossifari. And that's just 2 real high-profile interviews right there. Okay, maybe one more than the other, but yeah, I'm really excited about these interviews. Should be some really good stuff coming up. Not to mention, like I said, I've already done some really cool interviews. There's some good episodes coming down the pike, y'all. So I am excited to share all of those with you, and that's really all I've got for this week in this section. I guess I'll do the quick reminder if you are a new listener. This is a crowdsourced zoo news program. So if you see anything that you think might be zoo newsworthy, go ahead and tag me in it on the socials at Rossifari, on TikTok at Rossifari Pod, as long as that's still allowed to exist, or email them to me, rossifaripod@gmail.com, and I'll say your name at the end of the episode. Also, make sure you're following along on those socials and that you hit subscribe on the podcast feed. And hey, if you're interested in what we're doing here and want some more stuff and also want to support us, you can go to patreon.com/Rossifari to support the pod. So with all of that said, it is time to get to it, y'all. Let's go.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Ow, that's a funky monkey, tree kangaroo, or a binturong.
It's Zoo News.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to start off this week with a headline story. A new study has come out recently, and I found it absolutely fascinating as it deals with one of the most controversial subjects in the whole zoo and aquarium world: cetaceans. Now, to provide just a little background here, cetaceans are marine mammals such as whales, dolphins, and porpoises. And whenever I talk about the anti-zoo movement, there are basically three facets. There are the people who think that all animals should be out in the wild, left alone from any human interference. There are those who think basically that same thing, with the exception of rescued non-releasable animals, who think that zoos and aquariums shouldn't exist, but that sanctuaries should. And these are often the people who seem to not understand what the word sanctuary does and doesn't mean, like we talked about a couple episodes ago. And then there are the people who truly don't have a problem with zoos and aquariums, but they do struggle with them keeping a few species. Elephants, orcas, dolphins, stuff like that. And in some cases, great apes also. So basically elephants, maybe great apes, and cetaceans. And the argument made by these people is that it is hard to provide these animals the complex social needs and physical enrichment they get in their natural habitat, so they should not be kept under human care, even if all other animals are able to be adequately cared for. There's actually been moments in my life when I've kind of wondered if zoos and aquariums just moved away from those species, if like most of the anti-zoo movement wouldn't go away. Because honestly, in my own experience, conversing with and debating the anti-zoo crowd and stuff, this is by far the largest group. Now, again, I don't have any numbers to back that beyond my own experience, but yeah, it does seem to be the case. And actually, this group does have some prominent members in the zoo and aquarium world. Most notably, the president and CEO of the National Aquarium, who has come out against the idea of cetaceans in human care, promising to end the dolphin program at the aquarium and to move all of the dolphins to a sea pen sanctuary once they are able to get it built and get the dolphins trained for life in the ocean, even if it is protected life. This plan was announced back in 2016 and is still in the works, and it has created some, shall we say, resentment from other facilities with cetaceans and no plans to end their programs. So this group of anti-zoo advocates that just advocate for the removal of these couple species, they've actually had a fair share of success with legislative victories in places such as Canada and France, where cetaceans have been banned from aquariums in certain situations. Although honestly, the execution of those laws, it's often very challenging. Most facilities that have cetaceans don't exactly have enough room for a large influx of additional whales or dolphins. So like if a place gets shut down or if a whole country loses their entire population, then where do you move them to? And we've already seen from examples like Keiko that it is not possible to just release these animals back into the wild. This problem has actually led some belugas and orcas to be transferred from facilities that were good facilities to places that had a worse reputation by far, with the end result being, worse welfare for the animals that the activists worked so hard to, quote, save. So the question becomes, if a facility like the National Aquarium decided to move away from cetaceans, or if the government decides to make it illegal for a facility to hold them, what do you do with the current collection? And the proposed answer for a long time has been sea pens. As a matter of fact, if you listened to our recent episode from Sea Life Grapevine, you heard that the Sea Life Trust runs the world's only beluga whale sanctuary, which currently holds 2 belugas in sea pens. But in general, the idea of sea pens has been far more of a pipe dream or a temporary solution used while trying to release these animals back into the wild than an actual long-term tenable solution. And now a new study has come along that states that sea pens are not the magical solution for cetaceans many in the anti-zoo world claim them to be. Now, I need to say up front that the study was done by the Loro Parque Fundación, which is a conservation organization that is run by Loro Parque, which is a zoo. It is a zoo. They have orcas in human care in their facility. However, the Loro Parque Fundación is supposedly independently run, and they currently have 18 conservation projects running across the globe. The study was funded entirely by the Fundación, not the park itself, and they claim that they have no conflict of interest in the study, which, that is debatable, but it was also peer-reviewed and accepted as such. So take this, with that knowledge, but also let's look at what a peer-reviewed scientific paper had to say. So the study's authors spent a lot of time examining the welfare of beluga whales that had been moved into sea pens in order to determine if this move had any improvement on their welfare. And the findings were basically no. In fact, at the Sea Life Sanctuary, the 2 residents currently spend around 92.6% of their time in their indoor pools, either by their choice or out of necessity because of the issues they encounter in the sea pens, like medical issues and such. So yeah, that's right. Even these 2 belugas actually live basically in an aquarium for most of their lives. And don't get me wrong, I'm not bashing on it. It's a great aquarium that cares for their needs and all, but that's clearly not the goal of a sea pen sanctuary. But the limited time spent in the sea pens has led to a lot of obvious emotional distress as well as physical health concerns for the belugas in question, proving that just going back into their natural environment is not something that guarantees better welfare for the animals. Now, they have been there for 5 years in this sanctuary and still they can't even spend 10% of their time actually out in the sea pens, right? And so that is the main focus of the study, but also it goes back to the Keiko situation. And if you don't know the name, that is the whale that was in Free Willy, the movie, and there was a huge public outcry that occurred when people found out that Keiko was living in an aquarium after filming the movie, because I guess the public just assumed that a wild orca decided to act in a movie? I don't know. Anyway, the outcry led to Keiko moving to a sea pen for 2 years, where he encountered numerous health issues before he escaped, was lost for a while, and then was rediscovered in the waters around Norway, where he passed away from a disease at the age of 27. So, yeah, while there is a very limited number of animals that have been transferred from human care to sea pens that we can study, as the studies are being done, the results aren't great. And this latest study shows that they really don't seem to be the stopgap measure people seem to think they are. And so that's kind of the end of that story. But on a side note, in researching this topic, I spent a good amount of time on the websites of many anti-zoo organizations reading their takes on the concept of sea pens and specifically on the Keiko situation. There wasn't much about this brand new study that just came out. And while I fully acknowledge that there are ways to look at the situation with a different lens than I do, I was somewhat shocked to find that many of the sites just lie. I actually found 2 that claim that Keiko is still living in his sea pen happily today, despite the rumors of his death. Now, to be clear, he is not. Those are not rumors, and the sea pen was broken down after he left it. Many of the other sites, they're not that dramatic, but they do claim that Keiko had no health problems while in his sea pen and that he was perfectly healthy, despite the fact that there are publicly available records that prove otherwise. The more I see of this movement as I talk to people or visit these pages, the more shocked I am at the willingness of people to lie to get what they want, and the willingness of people to believe those lies without doing any actual research. It's really disheartening, but I guess we are kind of just at the start of the disinformation age, and it definitely plays into that. So, yeah, that is that story, and sometimes, man, people they just get to me. But anyway, on a happier note, that brings us to our births for the week. The Prague Zoo has welcomed 5 cheetah cubs, all of which are doing quite well. Chili, their mother, is doing a great job raising her kiddos. And in general, cheetah moms are very good parents, raising their cubs with attention and even letting them eat before mom does, something that is not super common amongst the larger cats out there. Our friends at the Lehigh Valley Zoo have announced the birth of the first ever eland calf born at the zoo. Born to mom Moira and dad Code, the little one is absolutely adorable and, if I may be so bold, maybe should be named David because, he's Moira's son. Just floating it out there. Just saying. Twin cotton-top tamarins were born to mom Luna at Brevard Zoo recently. The family now has 7 of these tiny monkeys, and all of the family is chipping in to help care for the new babies, including, the siblings and stuff. They're all working together to raise the kiddos, which is adorable. And the babies are doing well. And then last but not least in births this week, the Colchester Zoo has welcomed a Philippine spotted deer calf. This endangered species is protected by law in its natural habitat, but the laws are not enforced super well, leading to additional population declines due to hunting, despite the government supposedly stepping in with these laws. So every birth for the species is particularly important. And that brings us to our deaths for the week. We have to start this section by acknowledging the passing of 2 people before we get to the animals. First off, Hugo Fernandez Bayón has passed away after being involved in a fatal car accident. Hugo was the executive director of the European Association of Zoo and Wildlife Veterinarians, the counterpart to the AAZV in the States. And since this past year was a joint conference in Toronto, I got to know Hugo and even work with him on a presentation I put together for the conference. He was incredibly kind and very driven, and we shared many laughs at the conference. He was even committed to doing an episode of the podcast later this year, and I was really looking forward to sharing his brilliant mind and fun personality with y'all. Before becoming the executive director of EAZWV, Hugo graduated from vet school in Barcelona, where he also received a PhD in veterinary immunology and epidemiology. He then joined the vet staff at the Barcelona Zoo, where he became the lead veterinarian. He was known for advancing the work of animal welfare in zoos and also in infectious diseases in animals. Sending all the love to those who knew him well, especially his wife and children and the members of the EAZWV and AAZV. Hugo is greatly missed. The second person is a person I didn't know personally, but who had a major impact on the Staten Island Zoo. John Ponzio was a huge presence at the zoo. He started there back in 1994 as a volunteer, then became a docent, and then a zookeeper. He was the manager of the Children's Center at the zoo for many years. He was known for keeping excellent relationships with both the animals and the humans at the zoo. In fact, he loved the place so much, his family is asking for donations to the zoo in lieu of flowers. One thing I have learned doing this podcast is that small zoos often thrive or fail because of the personalities that fill them. And John was the kind of person that keeps a small zoo going and brightens the lives of all that work there, live there, and visit. He will be missed. And moving on from humans, we start the animal section with the passing of 2 red pandas, both of whom were incredible animals. The Western North Carolina Nature Center has said goodbye to Lefa, the 16-year-old female that was one of the first red pandas to call the center home. She was a great mom, giving birth to 8 cubs in her time, and had enjoyed her retirement at the center for quite a while now. The center is obviously heartbroken at the loss of this beautiful animal. And the Beardsley Zoo has also said goodbye to an older panda, Barry. Barry was slow to recover from anesthesia after a veterinary procedure and did not survive the process. Now, Barry was a super sweet and shy panda who I had the chance to spend some time with a while back. She was such a little joy. Barry actually was the current mayor of the zoo, which is a fun voting tradition the zoo holds annually. I know a lot of you went and voted for Barry. And to my knowledge, this is the first time a sitting mayor has passed at the zoo, and the zoo will be making an announcement about a succession plan after the appropriate mourning time has passed. And while some of you may say that sounds kind of silly, a lot of people are actually very invested in the election every year, and I think it's great that the zoo plans to continue that tradition and to continue having a mayor, and I am sure that the zoo will use the announcement of what's going to happen moving forward to continue to honor Barry's life. That good girl is going to be missed so much. Zoo Knoxville has announced the death of Kowali, a 47-year-old western lowland gorilla. Kowali was a mother of 4 gorillas in her time. Sadly, she was suffering from heart failure, a disease common in gorillas in both the wild and in human care. She was a beloved member of the family at Zoo Knoxville and is greatly missed. The Cincinnati Zoo has announced the passing of Nadine, the black-footed cat. Nadine was almost 17 years old, an incredible age for a species with an average lifespan around 10 years in human care and less in the wild. Now, Nadine was like many cats. She had a huge feisty personality, but could also be incredibly sweet and loving with her care team. Night hunters simply won't be the same without her. The Oklahoma City Zoo made the tough decision to humanely euthanize Rex, the oldest male Asian elephant that called the zoo home. Rex was estimated to be around 57 years old, making him one of the oldest male Asian elephants in the AZA. Due to his advanced age, Rex was receiving treatment for osteoarthritis and other age-related issues, which unfortunately stopped responding to treatment. Rex was a father to 3 elephants in the herd, but other than during mating season, preferred to be a solo elephant, often requesting and being granted access to his own yard rather than spending time in the yard with the rest of the herd. His huge tusks and mottled skin made him a favorite amongst guests, and his presence will be greatly missed. And last but not least in this section, our friends at Elmwood Park Zoo have said goodbye to a boa constrictor named Rocky. Rocky lived for 18 and a half years at the zoo after hatching there, starting life as an ambassador snake and eventually retiring to an on-exhibit animal situation. Way back in 2017, Rocky was diagnosed with inclusion body disease, which is a highly contagious disease that is very challenging to manage, but the team at the zoo did an incredible job giving him the best quality of life while also keeping the other animals at the facility safe. In fact, that wasn't the disease that led to his passing, as he ended up getting cancer along with some other health issues that often come with aging in snakes. Rocky is an amazing example of the amount of work that a zoo will put into caring for a single animal, and I will miss seeing his adorable face at Habitat HQ. And now, moving on to the rest of our zoo news section. Let's start off with a quick story about giant pandas. You may remember that after all the pandas left the States, except for the ones who were at Zoo Atlanta at the time, reports started coming in that pandas would be coming back to the States, and the first zoo that announced it was the San Francisco Zoo. And then it was San Diego, and then the National Zoo in Washington, D.C. Well, D.C. got their pandas, and they will be available for public viewing shortly. Members can already go see them. San Diego got their pandas, and they have been on Habitat for a while now. And San Francisco? Crickets, y'all. And given the amount of controversy surrounding the zoo, which I've talked about on here at length, I was wondering if this announcement would ever come to fruition. And now it appears it might not. For starters, one of the biggest supporters of bringing pandas to the zoo was former Mayor London Breed. But Breed was not reelected, despite the fact that his campaign frequently featured his plans to get the bears to the zoo. The new mayor-elect, David Laurie, seems lukewarm at best when it comes to the idea. And that's not the only political roadblock, as President-elect Donald Trump has been on a full-on anti-China rant, causing diplomatic strains between the two nations. And beyond the politics, real estate magnate John McNellis, one of the top donors at the zoo, is pushing back in a very major public way. McNellis wrote to the San Francisco Chronicle stating that, quote, "Pursuing pandas while the zoo is in its worst shape ever is a serious mistake. The money that it would cost to grandly house and rent pandas from China could be far better spent on at last renovating the zoo, repaving its cracked and failing roads, replacing its spent landscaping, and rehabilitating its existing exhibits." Now, all of that, coupled with the controversies surrounding the current zoo president, who is somehow still in power, means there is not a lot of momentum for pandas actually showing up at the San Francisco Zoo anytime soon. But as always, when it comes to the San Francisco Zoo, I do need to point out that I've met a lot of the keepers there. I've been there. Amazing people do amazing work there. The issues are just at the top. All right, moving on. Henry Vilas Zoo in Madison, Wisconsin is launching a new study to measure the amount of empathy people feel for animals at the zoo. This is being funded by an organization known as Advancing Conservation Through Empathy for Wildlife, also known as ACE. The idea behind the study is to see how much people actually connect with animals at the zoo, because empathy is key to fostering conservation actions. At this time, the zoo does not have a plan in place for the study, with methods still being debated. But I will definitely be curious to see the results. The Calgary Zoo recently brought in 2 new wood bison, Keewatin and Taiga, and it turns out that both females arrived pregnant. Now, while complications are always possible, this means that the 2 new wood bison could become 4 as early as this spring. Fingers crossed. New England Aquarium put up a really adorable post recently illustrating how important and fun enrichment items can be. One of the seals that lives at the aquarium is named Reggae, and he has a rubber ducky he loves playing with. His trainers have worked with him on a find it behavior where they hide his ducky in his habitat and he has to search for it, helping him work on discriminating between different objects. He also loves to play with it in a variety of other ways, helping with his cognitive development and enrichment. And examples like this are why I find myself firmly on the side of, hey, non-naturalistic enrichment is just fine in that ongoing debate. It works well, Reggae loves it, and it's adorable. What more could you want? And staying in New England for a moment, Zoo New England has announced the launch of the Center for Zoonomics, a research initiative based at the zoo that is working in collaboration with the Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard University. The mission of the center is to integrate medical and conservation genomics to improve animal health as well as human and ecosystem health. The center is launching in part because of receiving a federal grant worth just over $500,000 to support the efforts to build capacity for zoos and aquariums to use genomics research. So very cool, very nerdy science stuff. Love it. And then last but not least in zoo news this week, Highland Wildlife Park has been part of an interesting situation involving a pair of lynx. When people started seeing the 2 cats running free in the Cairngorms National Park in Scotland, many people reached out to the zoo assuming they had an escape situation on their hands. The zoo had not, in fact, lost any lynx, but they did team up with Police Scotland and other partners to help with the situation. The 2 lynx were captured by experts from the zoo and placed into the zoo's quarantine facilities, with the eventual plan being to move them to Edinburgh Zoo as long as they are deemed healthy enough to live there. It appears as though the two lynx were released illegally into the wild, and they would have died if not for the involvement of the zoo and the police. So, very grateful for the work done by the zoo in that situation. And that brings us to Stereotypical Animal Podcast theme song. Here to bring you to conservation news. Scientists from the Zoological Survey of India have identified a new species of pangolin. The Indo-Burmese pangolin diverged from the Chinese pangolin approximately 3.4 million years ago, but is still similar to that close relative. This marks the 9th species of pangolin, which is, of course, the most trafficked animal in the world. Grizzly bear populations are on the rebound in the continental U.S., with their numbers nearly tripling since reaching historic lows back in the 1970s. The population is around 2,100 in the U.S. at this point, which is a great rebound from the triple-digit numbers that they got down to, but still a far cry from the 50,000 or so that we used to have, and that would make up a stable population and properly fill the niche that grizzlies filled back in their heyday and should still be filling. So, yay for the rebound, but also that's, quite the reminder that we have lots of work to do still before this population is back to where it needs to be. And then last but not least, in conservation news, a conservation initiative that launched back in November of 2022 is just starting to gain traction globally, and I wanted to share it with y'all. It's called Shellbank, and it was launched by the WWF in order to help save sea turtles. Shellbank is a DNA traceability toolkit and global database of marine turtle DNA. And what that means is that anytime authorities are able to get their hands on any turtles or turtle parts from the illegal wildlife trade, they will be able to take genetic samples from the turtles and then trace them back to where they came from geographically, getting a much better picture of where trafficking is happening at higher rates, and then increasing protections in those specific geographic areas. It's all very fancy and very sciencey, and I'm very excited at the prospect of this helping to tamper down the illegal wildlife trade as it pertains to sea turtles. I think that's just so cool. The idea that, this poached sea turtle situation could turn into finding the place and the people and getting protections. That's just magical to me. I love it so much. And that brings us to
It's time for other news. It's time for other news. Hey, now, right now, it's time. It's time for other news. Hey, it's a segue to the part called other news.
A few years ago, Paramount Pictures decided to license the rights to the life of British singer Robbie Williams for a biopic called Better Man. And in one of those decisions that leaves people scratching their head, well, actually, let's be honest, it was head scratching. I don't think a whole lot of people really know who Robbie Williams is. I mean, this is not the person you would make a picture about, in my opinion, but whatever. But that wasn't the only head-scratching idea, because the decision was made to portray Robbie as a CGI chimp rather than as himself in the film. It's literally a chimp, like in full costume and everything, doing what Robbie Williams did in the real world. But again, it was a fully CGI chimp. And many primate conservation organizations actually praised the film for choosing to use CGI rather than a trained chimp for the work. But the general public has not responded. In its opening weekend, Better Man brought in just $1 million, a horrendous opening for a modern major studio movie that cost over $110 million to make. Apparently, not a lot of people were interested in seeing a CGI chimp play a mid-level music star on the big screen. Who could have seen that coming? An important note for those of you on socials. There is a viral video going around the internet that purports to show firefighters rescuing animals from the ongoing California wildfires. It is a fake AI-created video, so don't fall for it and don't share it. It is a disservice to the real people fighting these fires and also shows human-animal interactions that would not go as well as they're shown there if people were to recreate them, even firefighters. So for the sake of the animals and humans and just trying to cut down the proliferation of AI in the world, just don't give into the temptation to share. And remember, if you did share, totally cool. A lot of people don't realize that it's AI, whatever, I get it. But you can just delete your post and it will lose that engagement, and that will actually help it to fall out of the algorithm more quickly, because the more times a post gets shared and then deleted, the various social media company algorithms look at that and are like, oh, there's probably something bad here. We're just going to stop sharing this as much. And then last but not least in other news this week, Goff Elementary School in Moses Lake, Washington, experienced an immediate lockdown to protect students and staff after a mountain lion was seen prowling near the school. Except it wasn't a mountain lion. It was a really, really fat house cat feasting on a rat that got called into the authorities, where someone truly thought it was a mountain lion. Now, the lockdown was lifted as soon as the Tabby was identified, but not before this story went viral. Apparently, this is not the first time this has happened either, which I just find beyond incredible. But, good job to the school for locking down quickly and protecting everybody from the fat cat. No, but seriously, they did the right thing. Protecting their students from basically Garfield.
Oh, animal holidays. Animal holidays. Hey!
All right, it is still January, which is an animal holiday-less month, and there are only 2 individual days this week, but they're very cool ones. The 20th is Penguin Awareness Day, and then the 21st is Squirrel Appreciation Day. So make sure you're very aware of penguins this week, and also that you tell the squirrels that you see that you appreciate them. And those are your animal holidays for the week. All right, there you have it, folks. Another episode of Rossifari Zoo News is in the books, or I guess in your ears or your download queue or whatever. Anyway, I would like to say thank you to my Red Panda level patrons, Dr. Laura Shank, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, and Kevin Williams. I'd also like to say thank you to everyone who contributed to the episode this week, including Anya Keene, Colleen Lenahan, Kim Cooley-Croninger, Carrie Kirkpatrick, Kevin Williams, Emily Rockbuck, Dr. Natalie Taco, Daniel Cohen, Becca Robinson, Rowena White, Ali Malensky, Kay Malensky,
The Malenskys.
Andrew King, Kristen Dickey, Anna McEachran, Jacob Zinn, Emily Poche, Michaela Baratka, Dr. Zoe Rossi, Lizard Dunlevy, Dr. Laura Shank, and Matt Patford. Thank you all for contributing to this week's episode. I appreciate you all very much. And with that said, we'll be back here on Tuesday for another interview episode. But until then, remember, friends, the words Newsy Credits Backwards are, you guessed it, Steiderkuswen. The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo. Diverged from the Chinese pangolin approximately, good lord,